And me say, hey, 60 years I'm moving. And me say, hey, from Parkinson we hailing.
Well, good evening. It's 6:01 in the evening in Barbados. I am Carl Alf Padmore, proud alumni of Parkinson Memorial School. 60 years ago, in the bosom of St. Michael, a place of excellence was constructed, a place men called home. Homeschooling for us was long before COVID-19. We loved that place. It gave us academics, sports, camaraderie, and it gave us national pride. Parkinson Memorial at 6 will take us through that journey. Younger. We don't have old people at Parkinson. We grow fine. In fact, in the middle of that panel is a young man who we believe have taught about 3 or 4 generations. We call him the walking encyclopedia. And he will have to say as well, as a former teacher of excellence. Those who are listening, we want to say to you, place your mics on mute so that you can get the best possible feedback. We want to thank Brian Calendar, all of those who have made this possible. From the school, she is the secretary to the principal, and those are the teachers and the planning committee who made it possible. On the panel, we have Walt Johnson, who started at Belmont Primary, then went on to St. Giles Primary, before heading to Parkinson Comprehensive School. I need to take note of that word, comprehensive school. That was in 1962 until 1969. While at Parkinson, he represented the school in football, athletics, and he was a member of the school's drama club. And they took kits at Kensington Oval. And this was during the 1966 independence celebrations. Walter traveled to St. Lucia in 1968 and Dominica 1969 with other students and teachers. After graduation, he was employed for a short period at JD's company and later as a clerk at Transport. He emigrated to Canada in 1971 and gained employment with the Ontario Ministry of Revenue and retired after 40 years of service. And he currently lives in Toronto with his family. We welcome Walter Johnson to the panel. How are you doing, Walter? Walter, give a nod. Say something, Walter, so you know you're here. Give a nod.
Pardon me? You don't hear me?
Good. Right, good, Walter, good. Then we have Howard. Mark was raised in Canada, St. John. He served as deputy head boy to David McCarthy. And that was the graduation class of 1989. Mark then migrated to the US and joined the armed forces and received an honorable discharge after 4 years of service. Mark attended Central Texas College, where he earned an associate's degree in draft design. As a result, Mark has worked mechanical designing in the oil and gas industry, marine and shipbuilding industry, research and development, and currently in the Department of Defense. Mark has been a youth leader and mentor to elementary students. He has 4 wonderful children, an amazing wife, and enjoys golf, running, and cricket. I think there's something missing there, Mark. I'm not hearing any type of cricket in there. Mark. Then we have Frederick Ford, and he has many memories to recall, and he developed many staff relationships. The remarkable John Comac and Mr. Grantley Simpson worked to him, and his professional life has taken him to some of the best offices in the government service, and has been an education of his quality. And Mark Ford is looking forward to sharing his story with you. Let's plug in there Patricia Corbin, a retired educator who in Parkinson from St. Paul's Primary in 1962. She graduated in July 1969. Well, some of us were not born yet. And she joined the teaching service in October of that same year, and she remained in there for the next 38 years, teaching through primary down to tertiary. She entered the Erdison Teaching Training College in 1971 to 73 and taught at 3 primary schools from 1973 to 79. Trained at Housecraft Center from 1979 to 80. And she was attached to Joseph, we know it now as the Grantley Adams Memorial School from 1980 to 2008, during which time she taught economics, food and nutrition, clothes and textiles, and management. And she held the post of senior teacher for 19 years. David McCarthy has been a teacher for over 20 years. His teaching career began at the Princess Margaret School, where he held the position of graduate teacher of geography and later social studies. Maybe got that from Mr. Pilgrim. He's also held the positions of department head and senior teacher. Mr. McCarthy, a graduate of the Parkinson Memorial School, currently holds a bachelor's degree from the University of West Indies in political science with public sector management. He also holds a master's degree from the UE and University of London. In 2015, Mr. McCarthy was appointed deputy principal of Harrison College. And Mr. McCarthy's other interests include singing, songwriting. He's also Calypsonian and a former pickety crop and party monarch semi-finalist. He's currently the acting principal of Christchurch Foundation School. Eugene Pilgrim. Pilgrim has spent many wonderful years at Parkinson School. And let me plug in here. The jury is still out as to how old Eugene Pilgrim is. When I went to the school, they say he was teaching there about for 100 years. I know I look at him, and he still looks like 60. So I was reliably told by Lieutenant Colonel Errol Braffett that Mr. Pilgrim, you have to be 205. And he's met some of the most remarkable students at the school. And he what pleases him is they've gone on major public offices. And he has experienced the joy of many lifetime friendships with a wide cross-section of students and staff. To date, he has to be the only teacher who still teaches without looking at notes. Can any student testify to that in the chat? Have you ever seen him with a textbook? No. We get now to Lieutenant Colonel Errol Braffett, who I still own push-ups to. Lieutenant Colonel Errol Livingston Braffett received his early education at Erdison Prep School before moving on to Parkinson Memorial, where he received his second education, and then he joined the Barbados Corps in 1982. During final year of school, he served as house captain and deputy boy, where he commanded the respect of his peers and teachers alike. He holds a degree in arts, a bachelor's degree in fine arts, a master's degree in history, a diploma in education with distinction, certificate in educational management and administration. He's also assistant examiner, assistant leader for CX Visual Arts, member of the Barbados Carolina Connection Committee, the Ministry of Tourism, president of the Barbados Teachers Cooperative Credit Union. This is all posts that he worked. And having joined the number 9 company at Parkinson in 1982, he became the company's first sergeant major in 1986. Sadly, that is when I decided to join cadets and got my first set of ships too. In 2016, he was appointed commandant of the Barbados Cadet Corps. He served until 2020. During his military career, he was awarded the Efficient Decoration Award, the Caribbean Medal, and presented with the Jamaican Cadet Forces 75th Anniversary Medal. As an educator since 1992, he rose to the position of principal of the Ellerslie School, a capacity in which he served for 10 years before relocating to the Cayman Islands, where he's currently serving as the deputy commandant of the Cayman Islands Cadet Corps. Wow, an esteemed panel. Then we have a lady here and she always lived in Prince Royal. She played in many sports. Her principal was Mr. Reese, represented Barbados. She won a special Parkinson Award when we had a gala at Plantations. Uh, she is the longest serving umpire, and I'm being very scanty with hers because I'm going to start with her because she has an appointment. But after speaking to her and seeing the panel, we are sure that she wouldn't want to leave. So panel, just making sure, just put a thumbs up. Can everybody hear me good? Good. Marion Johnson Hurley. At school, we knew her as Marion Johnson. I came to school and I heard about this lady. Marion, welcome. How are you? Turn on your mic. How are you?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm fine, thank you, Karen. How are you?
I am behaving, but Marion, I am curious. I did some research, and I'm told that you did over 4 sports at school. Is that true? Now, be careful. Mr. Pilgrim is behind you, and he still flogs.
I'm not hearing you clear, Karen. Repeat that again.
I said you played over 4 sports. Is it true?
Oh, I did 5. You missed one, Karen.
Wow. Tell me about them. Go ahead.
Well, I would have played netball, basketball, volleyball,
Yes.
table tennis, and did athletics. And I represented the school in all of those events that I would have done.
What about football? I'm hearing rumors that you dabble in a bit football as well.
You know, I don't know if my memory served me right. I played on the first ever national football team, but I am not sure if I did play for the school. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I played on that first ever football team, national football team.
Oh, that first ever one. Take us back to that moment. A Pine girl, a Wildy girl, a Prince Royal girl going to Parkinson school. What prompted you to get involved in these sports, especially netball? Because you are the longest serving international umpire, about 20 years. Is that correct?
20 years. Retired
Yeah,
now, though, 20 years.
You're retired. So can you still play netball, though?
In my mind, I can, Carl. Yes, I can in my mind.
Tell us about netball at school. What did it mean for you to play Parkinson? That court, and I'm putting a plug here for the board, those who can hear me. I believe that netball court should be named after Marion Johnson Hurley. I believe that strongly. The highest rated netballer out of Barbados. So board members, if you can hear me, yeah, that's it. Good. That's my plug. You don't have to reply to that. Tell us about netball days.
Well, my netball days were basically, when I attended the school, I was at 11 years old. I started my netball career there. And under the auspices of Miss Merlene Gittins now, Mrs. Merlene Gittins now, formerly Mrs. Pilgrim, and then on to Miss Venetia Cadogan. Those were my netball coaches at school. And it was always a joy. I was like, I don't want to say, I laughed my way through playing. If anybody remember me, I just used to laugh, have fun, and enjoy my netball. And all the rest is history. But before I go on to speak only about my netball, I just want to say a little bit more on myself, because
yes,
I would have represented the school in all of those sports I said earlier: netball, basketball, volleyball, table tennis, and athletics. And as a result, in the sports, I was able to move on to a higher level. As I said, I represented on the first ever football team. I was coached by Mr. Keith Griffith. And
wow.
I further went on to represent Barbados in netball, basketball. So I would have represented the country then in 3 sports. And it didn't even stop there, because I think I should continue along the lines as I'm at it. After my finishing up of my sports life, I would have gained enough knowledge and experience while representing the school and then my country. And then it gave me the opportunity to further move on up the ladder. And in 1998, the International Umpires Award came into Barbados, and myself and Double H Tibbles were the 2 successful umpires. And that is when I started my international umpiring career. And I finished in 2018, which is like 3 years ago. So it's where 20 Stitch came from. And at present, I am now an international trainer. So it's called an ITP, International Tester Panel Cadet Trainer. So I'm like a cadet and I'm training under Tibbles.
A cadet, interesting, because we have a cadet master in here. Be careful using that. He may give you push-ups. Some of those teachers would have influenced you at school, your PE teachers. Tell us about some of those.
Oh, yes. As I said earlier, I started with Miss Maureen Gittins, which is now
right.
And then Vanisha Kadagan. We all know Miss Vanisha Kadagan. She's like a role model to me. And I started from school with her, my netball. I actually emulate her as an umpire because she was one of Barbados. She was the top umpire in my time coming up. And then when international came on the scene, she was on her way out basically. And it seemed to have picked up from where she had left off. And then every time she says to me, I'm so proud of you because you are walking where I couldn't have walked. And it makes me feel so good to know that I can continue knowing that she was my role model. And if I may continue along the lines of the interest, people might think that I just only have interest in sports, but because of the sparks and the interest that was shown to me, and I was able to move on to pursue my associate degree in physical education. And then I went on to do my associate degree in the Erdison Teachers Training College. And at present, I would have now finished my bachelor's in that same field. So it's like, it was so much ingrained in my blood that I kept going and I'm going to reach the top.
Wow. Now, as a young girl going to Parkinson School, the Parkinson Memorial School, what was it like advice would you give young ladies who now would want, or who are coming into the school and who are at the school? What advice would you give them?
Well, let me first say that it's not where you go, but it's what you do that is most important. And all schools are good. I just want to make sure that that is noted because some of us just think because we are at this school that our school is good. All schools are good. And I would like the parents to stop letting the children think that if they go to this school that they will not excel. It's about whatever you develop or whatever is in your goal to achieve. Is about working hard towards that goal. And I am so proud that I have been part of the building for the sports in Parkinson School. And sometimes when I hear certain names called after me, I'm so proud. Thinking about Janelle Innes, my little Janelle Innes, that was one of the recent ones that I can remember. That is an athlete. I mean, I feel so proud just knowing that there's still things going on up there. And what I want to say too is that Vanisha Kadagan, now the director of the National Olympic Academy. She was at my school presenting only Friday gone.
Yes.
About the Olympic core values, and this is something that I would like to leave with the persons leaving, whether you are my school or not. It's like values are things that will help you to decide what decision you will make. That's what the values are. And the three main core values will be excellence, friendship, and respect. And excellent doesn't only mean doing good, but striving to do better or to be the best that you can be in anything you choose to do in life. Friendship is very important because it is your mental health that helps a lot. Because if you have a good friend that can tell you not only what you want to hear, but what it is the correct thing to say morally, well, then that will help build you as well. And then we have the respect, which is treating and caring for one consideration. I think is that you making sure you put yourself in that person's position and try to treat them how you would want them to treat you. And to the adults listening, I want to say that children learn to respect by being treated respectfully. because some of our adults just want the children to respect them, and they don't show that child the respect. And it's like, how can I respect you if you are not showing me? And because of the figure that you are carrying, you think it is all right to do that, but it's not. If you show that respect to your child, you can in turn receive that back. And remember, the better you are with your life and how you handle your values, the better you'll be able to communicate with people, and then they will in turn communicate with others. So this will lead the world to be a better place, because I think that's what we should be always striving towards, a world that is of peace. It's not only about the academics part of it, that will come in, yes, but I think this is more important, and this is where we have to make sure that we can instill in our little ones going forward.
Wow, from a lady who is a mouthy person on the court, but off the court. Wow, thank you, Marion. No, Pat Corbin, guys, forgive me, but I have to deal with the ladies first. Come on, I'm a ladies guy. I'm sorry, gentlemen. I have to deal with the ladies. So you all go in the corner. I learned that from Errol Braffett, though. Pat Corbin, take us back to the early days. Is there any way that you can stand and show us the uniform that we can see it? Can we see that uniform, Pat? We're just in the top part. And take us back to the early days at Parkland.
Wow.
And Frederick Ford, you were River there as well. Good. Look at that uniform. Look at the early uniform. Wow. And Mr. Pilgrim, she's wearing it well. She's going around slowly. She's turning. She's wearing it well. Good.
It was worn with black shoes, navy socks, navy ribbons, and a Panama hat.
Okay. So where was your first plant? Where your first plant was not where we are. No, where was it?
I transferred from St. Paul's Primary to Parkinson Memorial. No,
Yeah.
it was not Parkinson Memorial at the time.
Comprehensive?
First, it started on the 12th of September, 1960. My sister, Lynette, who's 2 years older than I am, was moved from St. Paul's to Parkinson, and she was one of the first persons walking up that gap on the morning of the 12th of September, 1960. So and it opened as the Pine Secondary Modern School. Almost a year later, they had the opening ceremony, and that is what we're now celebrating as the 60th anniversary. The opening ceremony, where the school was then called Parkinson Secondary. And it was named after a great educator, Roy Parkinson. I think his photo is still in the hall. Mr. Beresford E. Barnett was the principal. When I arrived in September 1962 at 11 years old. I was placed in 1G with Mr. Jimmy McCollin, or James McCollin, as my form teacher. When I spent the first year there, and the second year I was moved to T. Subsequent forms were CR and L. G being grammar, T being technical, CR being craft, and L was lower for the slow learners. I proceeded up the remainder of forms up until fifth form in T, and we did at that time, we did first, second, third, fourth, fifth, lower fifth, and 2 years in upper fifth. So I spent 7 years. When I left after 7 years, I was then 18, and I went home for a couple of weeks. I had a little vacation, and then I was back in school again. This time, the face at the front. No longer the face in the chair, the child in the chair, but the face at the front. And I started at Stowe Primary. I had a very good background at Parkinson. I finished my home ec in lower fifth, and having time to burn, I went on to industrial arts, and I did 2 years of technical drawing with a volunteer gentleman from England named Mr. Briggs. I do not recall seeing his name on the staff list, but he was there for a little bit. I've been going through the staff list, and I can't remember if I saw Mr. Husbands, who was the head of industrial arts. But my main thing was home ec. And Miss Jackman, Rosie Jackman, used to keep us very busy. Every school function, she would call on a certain set of girls to prepare for the function. My fifth year, I remember teachers like my fourth and fifth year teacher was Mr. Corroy Holder, who is now deceased. There was also Mr. Cumberbatch. Mr. Odell came straight out of school and spent some time. When I left, he was still there. Mr. Pilgrim came straight from school. And
you mean the Pilgrim that's in the group right now?
Yes,
You mean the Pilgrim that?
This Mr. Pilgrim, he was fresh out of school, a little fresh faced boy.
All right, hold there, because I want him to join at this point. Miss Pilgrim, those early days, how was it for you? Why did you join in there? Because persons like David, myself, Lieutenant Colonel, Mary, we wouldn't know about those days. I don't even think Mark would know about those days. But I want you to come in there to compliment what Patty's saying. Tell us about it.
We were almost the same age.
Wow. Pilgrim, we want to hear from you.
Well, it was extremely, very interesting school. Lots of very dynamic teachers, very able students, and everybody seemed to want to get the best out of everybody. So whether you were playing football or cricket, whether you're doing athletics, whether you're going to be doing any subject, even the what we call the slow learners, because I had one of those classes, and my class used to be outside the head teacher's office, so you'd often look outside to see what's happening because the class was quiet and everybody was working. And one of those guys is a guy I met just recently called Ibar Stewart, but his real name is Spencer Stewart. And these guys went on to do all kinds of interesting things, and they were considered to be the low of the lowest. But with Pat and all of those students, they made the school a good school, very good school. And you had to be very punctual. Once Barnett and Husbands was there, you just can't let up on that because they would really capture you one way or the next.
How many principals did you work with, Mr. Pilgrim? How many principals did you work with?
There are 6 or 7. The last 2 I haven't because they would have been out of my time when I retired. But one of the interesting things is, well, what we call the back of the school or the south end of the school, and the younger guys would come and see a fence there, but there was really no fence. And just
Right.
where the school was a cane ground. And
Wow.
Mr. Ford will be able to tell you that. You dare not play that ground and the caught. That would be a bad thing for you. And you could watch those fellas cutting canes and can't touch one of them. And that was just less than 10 feet away from the school.
I hope pause
So,
there, Mr. Ford. Mr. Ford. Mr.
yeah,
Ford.
Mr. Frederick.
Ford. Frederick, I want you to join in here because
I'm here.
you are saying to me a cane ground was just outside the school, and you can smell the cane cutting, and you couldn't even go and get a joint.
Well, first let me say, good evening to everybody, and I'm happy to see the folks here. I obviously know some, I don't know everybody. For instance, I don't think I've ever met Marion, but she seems a very lovely lady, especially from her exploits. Yes. Now, I grew up fairly next to the school. I am from St. Barnabas. I lived in Mount Friendship, and I also lived in Dash Valley. My father was in Dash Valley, and my grandmother, paternal, was in Dash Valley, my father as well, and my maternal grandmother was in Mount Friendship. So, so getting here was a very easy thing, you know. There were two options there. One was called crab, and crab was pretty fast on his feet. But at school, I didn't have to really go behind the school to get sugarcane because the whole area in Lildy was all sugarcane. So you could have left my home, walk through the cut hill, as you would call it then, and you would get as much cane as you want. But sometimes we forget what is around us. The school, first, if I can make a criticism, the playing field, there were two playing fields. One for the folks in the fund, and on that playing field, we had our industrial arts wing, but that was mainly for the folks in the fund. But our playing field, the school's playing field, is right where the building was built that was built. And I believe the folks who organized the structure of the school and did the drawings recognized that there was a road. There was a road right next to the playing field, and then beyond the road was CBC. So therefore, it would have been better to have that area as a playing field because you would not be distracted by the cars and the vehicles and stuff passing. Although at that time, the volume of vehicles and stuff would not have been the same as today. But yes, there was a playing field below, at the back of the school. Mr. Briggs, Pat mentioned Mr. Briggs. Mr. Briggs was a gentleman from, I think he was from Yorkshire in England, or somewhere in England for sure. And he was a very nice gentleman. Um, I remember going to play at school called the Monkey Sport. Because I used to be involved in Parkinson was real multidisciplinary at the time. We played several sports. I participated in cricket and football, which well, I could say soccer, just to separate it out from the American football. So I played soccer, represented the school at both soccer and cricket in my very first form. When I joined the school in first form, 1G, as part I mentioned the various titles of the names of the classes. So I represented the school in those two sports fairly successfully. And I believe some of my colleagues back then would tell you that the Dusra was a ball that I bowled frequently, and it was a solid all-rounder. I recall one day, we had 3 batsmen that you couldn't really get out, no matter who you were playing. Timothy Boyce and Joe Morley opened batting. I believe a lot of you will have heard about Timothy Boyce. And Anderson Walker came at number 3. And then it was very difficult to get any. We had a lot of century opening partnerships back in those days. And one day, a group of us met Mr. Briggs. Mr. Briggs used to live in Parkinson of Yesteryear. So a group of us met with Mr. Briggs, about 6 of us. When I met it, there was a gentleman called Chester Howell, who was one of our top cricketers. And he, along with Clive Odo, represented Barbados in Trinidad and Tobago in the Barbados Youth team. Now, I personally believe that Chester at that time was the best fast bowler in Barbados. And you know, you had Ben Saul and Charlie Griffin and those guys. But just that, I would like to say this. I believe that the lower secondary schools, as they are called now, were not given their true status when it came to even sports and cricket and stuff like that. But the Parkinson had a gentleman called Mr. Jilks. And Mr. Jilks, how should I put it? He used to say to us, if you have a team, a cricket team or any other type of team, in this case he was talking about cricket, and there were 11 geniuses on that team, all geniuses in their own discipline, that he would take a team of even average cricketers. Me, I might got 1 or 2 above average and outstanding fellas, but he would take that team, mold it into a team, and beat those geniuses every time. Because his whole theme, his whole scheme and theme was about teamwork.
Frederick, hold that. Frederick, I want you to hold that. I want you to hold that because I want to get some contribution from the others. But and speaking about teamwork, I want to go to Lieutenant Colonel because he himself started to instill something in the cadet corps. And he has an interesting story because if people knows the Errol Braffett story, there was a point that Errol was almost giving up on education. He went into driving taxi, and then he decided to go back to those foundational principles that he learned at Parkinson, and he went back into teaching with the same discipline. A cadet officer, Lieutenant Colonel, speak about that. Those foundational principles that you learned at Parkinson, how important were those for you? And then after you, I want to go right into Walter Johnson.
Yes, Mr. Padmore, good evening again to the members of the panel. Good evening to those who are listening in. For me, the Parkinson experience was a very dynamic experience. It provided me really with the tools, those foundational tools of actually built to survive as an individual within the society. Much to the credit of a gentleman by the name of Andrew C. Burnett, who was really responsible for the Parkinson Memorial School while I was there, followed closely by now Major Morador. So it was really working with the direction of those two, and indeed engaging students from across the length and breadth of Barbados and indeed the Caribbean, who we would engage at various camps from time to time. I want to say that as a student at school, I had one interest, and that interest really was to join the Royal Barbados Police Force on graduation, and that is what I really was working towards. Only to find out having gone to my first interview, that there was a height requirement. So all of the studying that I did at school, really, I did not have that half inch that I missed joining the police force by. And so that forced me into, first of all, getting involved in my father's business, which was the taxi business. Well, prior to that, I would have joined a security company or working as a security officer, with the intention of moving, having gotten the experience into the force. But all of that didn't work out. I decided, look, you know what, I'm going to go and join the army full time after that. And I had the discussion with Mr. Burnett, who said to me, you're not going to join the army on a full time basis. There's a lot more for you to do in this society. And so that was really the evolution for me, moving into the teaching profession, where I started, and moving with all of my skills, having served as a company sergeant major, and then joining the army as an officer, working with the cadet corps and indeed youth development. That was really the impetus for me, to develop further my skills that I would have garnered while, at school and while a member of the cadet corps. And I will say to you that the cadet corps and the Girl Guides, the Boy Scouts, and all those youth organizations really provided for all of the youngsters, including sports. It provided for them the opportunity to, as an outlet, to become competitive and to really understand that there is value beyond what many people said about the students attending the newer secondary school. So participation in those activities really kind of taught you that you were as good and you could be as competitive as anybody else. And the rest is history, as far as that is concerned.
All right, hold on there, Lieutenant Colonel. Hold a second. You, like I said, also want to hear from Walter. Walter, you would have gone through the ranks. You residing in Toronto. By the way, what's the time in Toronto now, Walter? Your mic is mute, Walter. Johnson, can you hear me? Walter? It seems that Walter's up. Okay, Mark and David will try to get word into Walter. Walter. Walter, see if you get your things started. I'm going to go across to Mark and McCarthy, head boy and deputy boy. McCarthy, tell us your story. Mr. McCarthy was the captain of the school debating team, and I was the number 3, which was the person to ask questions. I was that person on the team. Parkinson had the distinction to beat schools like Queen's College, the Polytechnic, Ellerslie. Sorry, Lieutenant Colonel, but we did beat Ellerslie. And we beat some of the best. Inside debating, McCarthy led us from the front. How are you, McCarthy? Going into Parkinson, you rose, you were always academic, but not only that, you always also got involved in community activities at the school and different programs. And Mark, as his deputy, speak about that type of relationship. Two of you all, go ahead.
All right. Good evening, everyone, to the panel and those listening on the stream. My years at Parkinson were exciting. I can't remember a time I was really down in any way, except a few scoldings from Miss Hunt. But who wouldn't be a little down after a scolding from Miss Hunt? But luckily, I never got any lashes from Miss Hunt. I would have
really, you were her favorite. You were her favorite.
You know? I don't know about favorite. Miss Hunt, whether you were a good or bad student, the point is when she found that you were wanting, she gave it to you in terms of her tongue, in terms of scolding you. And of course, if she felt that you needed to go beyond that, then you know you got the big letter strap there on the desk. But that's another story. But I want to pick up basically from everyone that has spoken so far, and I was particularly moved by what Errol said. Um, he said something about being just as good as the others, meaning the other students at the grammar schools, the Harrison College, the Queen's College. And I think a lot of us here, a lot of us here are testimony to this, and we are just about a small sample of the numerous graduates of Parkinson who have excelled in various fields and really excel. So I came into Parkinson in an interesting period. We had Miss Hunt for our entire period, and she still remains the only female principal, appointed female principal of the school. We had all the years with her. We came in at a transition point where some of the oldest long-standing staff were still there, like Mr. Pilgrim, Evergreen, Mr. Eugene Pilgrim. We knew of Mr. Messiah, that the nickname Ding Ding. I don't know, perhaps one of the others on the panel could explain why he was given that nickname Ding Ding. So we had about three or so years of him before he retired. He at one point even acted as deputy principal. Of course, we had Mr. Burnett, Mr. Hutchinson, and a whole set of other persons on the staff. A very dynamic staff, a staff that pushed you. And one of the things I remember in going back to what Errol said, Mrs. Williams, Eugenie Williams, chemistry teacher, science teacher, she, and her nickname was Hitler, that came with her from the garrison. Both she and Miss Hunt came over from the garrison almost at the same time. One of the things about Miss Williams is that she pushed you. She pushed and she pushed to get the very best out of you. And I remember many times she would say to us in her accent, "Your brain is just as good as those at Harrison College. So get on with the work. Get on with the work." She would always complain that we were not doing enough work. That time we are writing out exercise book after exercise book, you know. But Miss Williams said we are still not doing enough. And just to prove the efforts that she was making with us, if back in the day we didn't know about querying grades for CXC, if I had queried my grade in CXC back in the day, I probably would have gotten my grade 1 because my profiles were just below what was needed for grade 1 in chemistry. And I felt that I was struggling with chemistry all along, but Miss Williams was pushing all the time. Then you had Mr. Burnett in the debating that you're talking about, pushing us again to the point where we defeated Queen's College that year. I think it was 1988 or 89. And those girls cried. Those girls cried because they didn't expect to be beaten by Parkinson students. So no, they might expect challenge from Harrison College. And there it was that I was part of a team, including Mark, who is here now, and you, Carl, and that team that defeated Queen's College that year. I can't remember what was the topic. Was it 11 plus? I can't remember right now. And we also had defeated, you said we defeated Ellerslie. I think Ellerslie defeated us, you know. I think it was the Polytechnic that we had defeated. But when we went to Ellerslie, we were defeated in that debate because I think it was something on 11 plus exam. And there was a great divide in arguments between what Mr. Burnett was pushing and what Mr. Hutchinson was pushing.
Okay, right. Okay, fine.
Right. So.
But do not let Errol hear that.
But it's interesting that some of us now, so Errol went on to be principal of Ellerslie. Before us, David Brown, a Parkinsonian as well, went on and is still the principal of Queen's College. And I, of all persons, who at one time had some very strong views about Harrison College. I remember at university, and there were a few Harrisonians there that I used to cross swords with. And I remember telling one of them a time, if I ever get power in Barbados, I can shut down Harrison College. It is an elitist institution. I'm going to shut it down. And he told me at the time, you see you, I can make sure my daughter get into Harrison College before you get power. And to see years later, and I look forward to meeting him on this day to remind him of what I had said, because then I end up becoming the deputy principal of Harrison College. which is interesting. And I link all of that to my experience at Parkinson. Those teachers pushed you. The students at the time pushed you to excel. You never felt, I never felt that I was lesser than anybody else, especially at the grammar schools. I never thought that, not with the kind of work that you were forced to do at Parkinson and the kind of things that the teachers did to inspire you and to push you. So it isn't surprising, therefore, that quite a number of us, having been pushed like that, having been forced to set high standards for ourselves, that we end up excelling in all the different areas, in sport, in entertainment. Look at Edwin Yearwood. Edwin, I remember being introduced to Edwin in person in Mr. Earl Wilkinson's Spanish class in first form. Edwin came into the class and Mr. Wilkinson said, students, this is Edwin Yearwood, the winner of the Richard South Teen Talent Show. This is him right here. And that time, Edwin, very skinny and very shy. And then later on, then I was to see Edwin more than when we had the various concerts in the school hall. People should talk about those concerts. But I can go on the whole night.
We can let you speak with that. I want your deputy. I want your deputy to join in here.
Hey, hello,
Mark
everyone. Yes, sir. I'm very honored to be among this distinguished panel.
Mark is a multi-millionaire, so let's get away from that too, and other things I would say about him.
I would say, growing up, being the deputy head boy to David, and then through the years, I never knew that he would turn out to be such a comedian. But for David, I always used to have his back. You know, sometimes the students as deputy head boy and prefect, you know, some students will try to challenge you, you know, and it was great that the staff at Parkinson during our tenure trusted us enough to be leaders among the student body during our time. I oftentimes wondered why I was even chosen as deputy head boy, because I wasn't as active. I was always on the fringe. Not sure what the teachers saw. But they saw something in me, and I really do appreciate that. I can say so much about Miss Hunt. During my tenure, to me, she was like a statue, a giant. I can recall many times she would go to the bus station where the minivans used to be across from the Olympic Theater, and corral students. She would actually, I would say, arrest buses to say, hey, pull this bus and take them directly to Parkinson. And I don't recall ever a student getting so upset that they would put their hands on Miss Hunt. She commanded and demanded respect. And I tell you, she was really a giant, had the heart for the students. And if you're in an institution where the students do not matter, then their potentials will never be able to surface and come to fruition. When I say that, I speak of two teachers that really landed me in the position where I am today. Number one, my favorite teachers of all time, my math teacher, Miss Richards. I can remember what she did in teaching instilled a love of math for me. I mean, I will take my highest level of mathematics currently is differential equations. I did not get any exposure to calculus, to differential equations at Parkinson. Didn't get it, but I got the foundations. I got the base. I got the fundamentals that drove the love in it for me. And then I must speak about Mr. Barrow in the technical drawing department. A man who demanded quality of work, pride in your work. And it was from that my love for the technical side of academics really blossomed. I was not a science guy. To this day, I'm still not a science guy, but I prefer the technical, the industrial side. And today, as Carl mentioned, I am a mechanical designer by training over 20 years, work in different industries, but my pursuit was to, if nothing else that I achieve in life, that I would be in the technical world. It is amazing. I was also in the cadets when I was at Parkinson. I didn't go to the camps, you know, but when I got an opportunity, when I migrated to the US, you know, one of the things that would afforded me to be able to afford and go to college was to take the advantage of doing military service. And it was the best thing in my life. I didn't join the military to retire. I joined the military for a stepping stone. And I did that. The military would have been easy. It would have been a piece of cake to do 20 years, but that wasn't my calling. I got in, got what I wanted, got out. It was an honor to serve, but I wanted to become a technical designer. I wanted to become a mechanical designer. And so I really want to give a big thanks to two of my favorite teachers, certainly not the only ones. I can certainly remember Miss Green, our English teacher, whom at times where I didn't feel comfortable in reading or think that I can read, just listen to her in dictation time and just reading during English literature time. I remember the story of the Puss in Boots, and how she would read that narrative, and I would go home and practice it just to sound like her, just to use her voice inflections and give me confidence that when I stand up to read, that I'm doing a good job. Miss Barrow, Spanish teacher, it's amazing. Everywhere I go, I show my true colors, my green and gold. There are other schools here in the U.S. that emulates those same colors, and I oftentimes reflect at my time at Parkinson. The teachers taught so much of us. I mean, even at our ending of years, when we would have to do the dancing, put on the program for our parents, the time that they invested in teaching us the varying different dances. I can also remember Miss Richards, I'm sorry, in our math class, took time on the weekends. We would go to her house for lessons just to get us ready, make sure that we have everything we need, was confident enough for the different exams that we had to take. And we certainly didn't get where we are on our own. There's no place like Parkinson Secondary. Oftentimes when I do get to make it back home, I make sure that I go up to visit the school. One other teacher that instilled pride in oneself and one's work was Mr. Husbands, and I think Miss Pat Corbin mentioned him. And he was in the industrial department. He was the only man I know that can write cursive on a straight line with no lines on the board. And again,
Mark,
yes,
Mark,
sir.
hold on. Let's see if we can get the gentleman here, Walter. We haven't heard from him yet, because after Walter, then I'm going to throw no questions and you all are free. I just want to say to you that you all, I'm going to give between 30 seconds and 45 seconds to contribute to whatever I throw at you. But this is important for us at this first hour. So persons who are streaming can get a sense of one, the foundation that was laid for you, your thoughts of the school, because this is a piece of history here in the making. And to document our story is always very important. That's one thing that I did learn from Mr. Pilgrim. The whole idea of documentation, we do not document enough. But Walter has gone. Can somebody, well, so until Walter comes back, we're trying to get a good signal from him. So the first question is, let's look at some of those key things that built the culture of the school. We already heard about sports. We heard about cadets. We heard from Pat about the love teachers, McKesson, Mark, Fedra again, teachers. But we have a teacher here, Mr. Pilgrim. Those who would have heard Mr. Pilgrim, all of you would have heard Mr. Pilgrim. So all of you are students of Mr. Pilgrim. What one thing all can draw on? If you all have to pull one thing that made that culture called Parkinson. Anybody can start. What was that one thing? Why did you want to through the gate?
The one thing that I must say about Parkinson is discipline. Discipline. I was there with Mr. Barnett, and I was there with Mr. Husbands. And there's no doubt about that in my mind, that those two head teachers commanded the respect of everybody. I know that no one from around the school, who living around the school, could enter that school and wreak any havoc on any student at the Parkinson School. And therefore, the type of discipline that was brought to bear routinely in the school, it was reflecting in how we approach our tasks, whether it was in sports or whether it was in academics. So that's
Hold
the
that
one thing.
140. Right, hold that 40. Pat, let's hear you. What is that one thing, Pat? Your mic.
Were really dedicated to having their students succeed. They even followed us after we left school. Because I
Wow.
remember Miss Bailey. She then became Miss Husbands. She was one of our home ec teachers. And she picked me up at Eagle Hall Primary and said, "What are you doing down here? You're one of my best home ec students." "Oh, no. You can't stay down here much longer." She was then head of school meals. And when she came back to that school, she brought me a form. She said, "Fill this out and give it back to me now." And I didn't spend another term there. Miss Maxwell lost her gain because by the time I was finished, that term was finished, and that was in like June. And by the time the term was finished, I was entered into Housecraft Center, and off I went to Grantley Adams. Another wonderful school. I don't mind who say that it is no school. It is the best school there is, because we have put out the very tops, and we have taken the children who people feel can do nothing and done a lot with them, because we get them in their interests. And the
Hold
thing
that,
that
hold that thought. You three guys, Mark, McCarthy, and Lieutenant Colonel. That one thing that stands out for you as an important pillar for Parkinson. What has made Parkinson for you? Why did you want to go through that gate every day?
to get those teachers.
Discipline. Go ahead. Go ahead.
The teachers, you were encouraged to come to school. You were encouraged to be there. You know that they were for you. I'm not sure if other students experienced that, but you weren't thought of less than. No, you came to Parkinson. You came to school. You came where you belong, and that's how I felt. You know, when I first got the results from my CXC exams, that Parkinson was where I was going. You know, it wasn't the first choice that I had, but when I got there, it was the place for me.
Okay, Lieutenant Colonel.
I want to use some terms. I want to say creativity, dynamics, motivation. The staff, people. I heard Mr. Barrow, Mr. Husbands, Mrs. Bovell, Mr. Harold Strawn, Major Mordor, Mr. Burnett. Those people really encouraged and stimulated you to want to be there. Mr. Pilgrim, who really, in terms of delivering geography, Mr. Applewhite. And so that gave me the direction, even in terms of how I advance as a leader, as principal of the LSD school, to encourage my students. I said to them, look, this is the very best school in Barbados. I said that because I really had to say that to them. I said, there's a different discussion for a different time. But for them, it had to be the best. It had to be the best school, which is why I moved to introduce sixth form, and the challenge of making the change to the uniform when people were referring to my students as brown cows. I couldn't have that, So I made those changes based on how I was motivated and stimulated at Parkinson Memorial School.
All right, hold on. Okay, I think we have Walter back with us. Walter, can you hear us? Walter Johnson?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good, Walter. Now,
Yeah.
everyone had a chance to do their introduction, but I'm going to go straight into it for you in the interest of time. Tell us 2 or 3 memorable moments for you at Parkinson, Walter. It seems something's happening in Canada. Walter, the cold is protecting you. We're going to send you some sunshine. I'm going to bag some medicine for you to talk that cold. Mr. Pilgrim, looking down at your students, I'm hearing dedication, I'm hearing encouragement, I'm hearing dynamism. What is that again? Wow. For you, Mr. Pilgrim, because a number of the teachers would not have Parkinsonians, but they're stayed at Parkinson 40 years, some 42, well over 30. And when you look at the teachers, one was that they were Parkinsonians. They internalized the school's motto, made it their own, and we saw in you as teachers that impartation of "we love you." So you have 1 minute, Mr. Pilgrim. Go ahead. Your mic, Pilgrim, Mr. Pilgrim, your mic. You see, you know that computers were not there when you were at the school.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
I just want to draw attention to really 3 students, and there are many more, but these you cannot ignore. When we thought about the problems that the country was facing in 2018, at the core of one of those persons who had the difficult task of sitting through all those meetings is Ian Carrington, a student that went to Parkinson, and he was there in the 80s. And he is the centerpiece in part of that whole discussion and presentation of what has happened in Barbados. And although Ian is a very modest guy, we want to just say to him that you've done a marvelous job for all of us here in Barbados. And you saved many different lives in many different ways. And kudos to you, and continue until you finish your entire working life. And then we have Chief of Staff, Chief of Staff Alvin Quinton, a model of a student in behavior and exceptional in the sense that his model was based on what Mr. Alvin Jones had taught him, and he says that to public. And I want to just commend him because there he was at the very top of the BDF. And then there's another guy which we don't really hear too much about is Stuart Main, the man who looked after the BTTI. And he came through the ranks of government really quickly. But because he says that what he had learned at Parkinson School and the way people have invested into his life is most remarkable. And there are many, many more of these students in public life who we would love to call, but the time is not there for us to be able to do it. But you're remembered in many, many different ways. Thank you.
Okay, so what we'll do, let's what Mr. Plum is saying, folks. I'm going to go around. I'm going to start. Pat, if you can call 2 or 3 Parkinsonians that you know that would have served either in public or entertainment. Let's call them so that those who are logged on, remember that this is being recorded, that they can get a sense of the contribution that Parkinson would have made in different phases of life. So, Pat, tell us about those that you know either from your time or beyond that we haven't mentioned yet that would have made that big contribution. And we want 2 or 3 names from all of you if you can remember. Pat? Pat, your mic? Pat, your mic? Go ahead, pardon?
Yes. Yeah, I said Edwin, my little neighbor, who used to sing in the
Edwin?
Aki Tree
Yes.
and ended up singing big stage.
Yeah.
Right.
Then there was Marcia Cutting, who rose to prominence in, I think it was BET, Barbados External Telecommunications, when it was there.
Yes.
Yes. And Timothy Boyce.
Give us one more.
Timothy Boyce, who's an entrepreneur. He has his own company.
Timothy Boyce.
Tim Real Estate is Timothy Boyce.
Okay, see Tim. Now, Frederick, give us some of those sports persons through your time, Frederick. I know, give us at least three. We know you would talk, Frederick, for a whole hour. You and Eugene Pilgrim, but just give us three. Your mic, Frederick. I realize those ones who do not have computers at school. Me either.
Jonathan Cameron Vaughan,
Yes.
who is an outstanding lawyer and academic. Ian Carrington, who is now
Yes.
currently the director of finance, who is now actually leading us through this Corvette and Boss program. Judy Thompson, who is an outstanding healthcare provider in the form of nursing in Texas. Merlin J. Jarvis Bino, who is in Canada. And I would like to probably mention a few more, but we don't have the time.
If we have at the wrap up, you could pellet those. Errol Buffett, Lieutenant Colonel. You might want to focus on those who would have excelled in the military or even in education. Talk to.
Well, I as you talk, I was not really specifically focusing on that, but coming to mind.
You can go ahead.
Would have been Hamilton Lashley.
Yes.
Minister of Social Transformation at the time.
Yes.
Alison Burke. I think she worked in the EPP's office, if not to that particular post. Bishop Marlon Husbands. Of course,
yes.
Major Joel Greenidge, who would have started as a cadet there at the school, as well as Adrian Critchlow, petty officer, Barbados Defense Force, to name a few.
Okay, Mr. McCarthy, other entertainers maybe, or other educators? Let's hear from you, McCarthy.
Some of the other entertainers would be people like Janice Mullins. I don't know if she's still into entertainment, but I know she was very much a perennial finalist with me in the Teen Talent years ago. Janice, she's into insurance now. There was also Lisa Howell, who I know had become a vocal trainer and was doing some work with the NCF years ago. Lisa Howell. Timmy, I understand, is also old scholar in entertainment. So those are some of the names that come to mind with regard to entertainment. Of course, there are others since then, the much younger ones. From my own year group, I would moving beyond just entertainment. There are a number of interesting persons such as Andrew Ford, who's an executive in banking. They have Carolyn Seeley, who's the secretary treasurer at Brantley Adams Secondary School. So there's a Parkinsonian wherever you go in Barbados, in the public and the private sector. There's a Parkinsonian wherever you go in the world. There's no two ways about
Okay,
that.
I think we have the gentleman back now. Is he there? Yes, sir. Talk to me. Do we have you this time? Walter. We can see you, Walter.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Good.
Okay, what was the last question you were asking?
Right. Tell us about one or two of the memorable moments for you at school.
Well, I guess I mean, it was, I guess it was a memory of our school. The relationship I had at Harris. One always put me along. I felt like
Breaking up.
On mute, Mr. Padmore. On mute, Mr. Padmore.
Sorry, I'm guilty as well. Oh dear. Sorry. Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel. No one wants to hear your voice. I have to fall in line, sir. Taking your stage further, your drill will teach you the about turn. The purpose of this drill is to teach you about the group of men to turn to an angle of 108 degrees to the right in a nice, social, and uniform manner. I was saying, Pat and Frederick, how different was present plant to the original plant? You know, now when you came into the school in the 80s, to the right, pre-Garner had agriculture growing there. We had actually had agriculture growing where that new building is. So a number of changes so that those who are listening and so that when the teachers play this back for the students, they can understand how different the school was. Take us through that, Pat and Frederick. You have 2 minutes, one apiece. You need to on mic, on mute.
Oh, I didn't know what you are.
Our track and
How
field.
different?
How different
How different was the school then and now?
was the school
You've
plan?
been into the school now. Tell us about it.
Well, one thing
We
I
didn't
say,
have
the school plan is not as great. And I think the current leaders in the school probably need to get in touch with some of the former students and stuff and see if the plan can be improved. I think I went in a toilet and it wasn't too good. But I don't want to talk about, those things that could be improved, really. But I want to make some final comments. And I want to pay homage to the former teachers as well. John Cumberbatch, Winslow Harris, a lady called, a gentleman called Mr. Brooks. You think, and I know a lot of people don't know Sylvia because Sylvia died pretty young. She was in her 30s. Both Sylvia and Mr. Howard. And those two teachers were of tremendous influence on my life. I would like to, and Francine Hunt, I think that's her name. She's now Francilla. She's now Prayers. So there were a number of teachers. But I also want to mention quickly one solid leader that we have had as a student. And his name is Earl Warner, who was a playwright who operated in Jamaica. Now, the Parkinson was absolutely fantastic when it came to drama. And our students performed before large audiences in Queen's Park at the Daphne
Joseph Hackett
Theater. I also want to mention another solid performer in terms of the performing arts, a lady called Myrna White Cummings.
Yes.
And I also finally will mention a gentleman called Michael Tudor, who is a gentleman living in the United States. And he is a solid person when it comes to computer technology and stuff like that. So just to say we mentioned those three. But if I get a chance, I would like to something. I would like to read something quickly for just 1 second. And I'm going to tell you how important these things are. And it comes from the Autumn Rivulets by Walt Whitman. And it is, there was a child went forth. There was a child went forth every day. And the first object he looked upon, that object he became. And that object became part of him for the day or for a certain part of the day. The early lilac became part of this child, and fast and white and red morning glories, and white and red clover, and the song of the baby bird, and the third month lambs, and the soul's faint liquor, and the mare's foal, and the cow's calf, and the noisy brood of the barnyard, or by the mire of the pond side, and the fish suspended themselves so curiously below there, and the beautiful curious liquid, and the water plants with the graceful flat beaks, all became a part of him. So I just wish to end my particular presentation by saying how important it is for the milk plant, which we call it the CBC, which was very instrumental in assisting the Parkinson School by exposing our players in cricket and in soccer and in debating and stuff like that. The churches, the afternoon, so everything, the neighborhood, and I would like
Okay.
to that
Now,
that is
Mr. Ford,
and development.
right, Mr. Ford, just want to say to you that over the last 2 years, the school would have spent lots of money upgrading the bathroom facilities. If you go there now, the bathroom facilities, I'll tell you, especially on the new block, can be compared to any you would find in any three-star hotel. And the board, on the board, what I have found over the years, a number of Parkinsonians have been selected to serve as board members. They do have the interest of the school at heart, and they represent well. Louis, for instance, I'm sure as well, and they're all there. If not for COVID, there's a new block that would have been as well transformed. So a number of projects are going on at the school, and this is for those who are listening as well. So while before there might have been, yes, some situations that were not the best, school is really on its way back up. So I would have shared that. Walter, I have 7 minutes. I'm willing to give you a minute again to see if we can hear you, Walter.
I can hear you, yeah. Hello?
Yeah, Walter, we can hear you. Okay, all right. Let's look now. So we have 7 minutes, and I am going to start from David, because David, we didn't hear you. Well, we did hear you, but I want you to know, Mr. McCarthy, those who are at the school now, what advice would you give them? The student, the present boy, Parkinson at 60. Therefore, those who are in first form might be there to celebrate Parkinson at 65. Those who are coming in this year will be there to celebrate Parkinson at 65. What advice would you share them, McCarthy?
All right, just a quick one there. Winston Jordan, if I stand corrected, is
Yeah.
an old scholar as well. And you know, late Winston Jordan was very good with costuming for the crop over bands as well as graphic artists.
Mhm.
What advice I have for the current students? The current students need to, if they have an opportunity to listen to all that we've said here, we are all standing testimony to the greatness of Parkinson and what the potential is at Parkinson. You go in and you put in your best effort because all that you want is already at the school. You still have, mind you, today now, most of the long-standing staff that we all know here have gone. There are just about a few now that we can count on both hands that still remain. But the new staff have taken up the mantle and are still there carrying on the traditions of excellence in teaching. And therefore, the students just need to, work hard. And you have a lot more at the school now than in our time. Certainly the technology has gone by leaps and bounds. Alf, do you know that, for example, we don't use T-squares in technical drawing anymore now? That's a software program where you
You
sit at your
serious?
computer and you design all the things that we did with our compass and with the set square and all that now is done via computer called in a program called AutoCAD. So the
Wow.
students today have access to a lot that we did not have. They can do a lot more once they are motivated, once they continue to get that push. Go in and do your work, be disciplined. Having a lack of money should not prevent you from learning. That's another thing. And I've understood that clearly when I was at Parkinson. I understood that clearly when I was at Harris College and certainly now at Foundation. So while people might say, but I've had a chance to work in two schools where the majority of the students are middle class, at both schools there is a body of working class students that still have to be catered for. And they sometimes are demotivated because they believe that they don't have as much money as the others. So even though they are in a quote unquote top school, they feel demotivated. And because they focus a lot on material things, and material things are not that important at this time. Those
All
things
right,
will come.
McCarthy, I want you to hold that because we have 3 minutes and I want to get everybody 30 seconds to wrap. Patricia Lloyd has been at the school working for over 31 years. The part that when she died, we have to find a space at the school to entomb her. Pa has been there. Her whole life she only knows Parkinson. I mean, Lieutenant Colonel, she went from a student and she's there 31. You know what's 31 years? 31 years. Magnet Man, McCarthy from Magnet Man, who's doing great work. So Mark, you have 30 seconds. Frederick, we heard from you already. We're gonna give Eugene Pilgrim 30 seconds as well, guys. We have 2 minutes remaining. We might have to do a part 2 of this. Go ahead, Mark.
Great.
30 seconds.
To all the students, Parkinson is a place to be proud of, but that pride in Parkinson School first start with you. Doesn't matter where you come from. Again, I live in the States. A lot of students complain about what they do not have. And if I were to reflect on what they have here in the States versus what I had when I was at Parkinson, I would have been considered in poverty. But I went there to learn. I came out with some self-esteem, being pride of who I am and who I was. And I think that if you took that same position, be proud of yourself, you then will certainly be proud of your school. It's a great institution to be a part of. Take whatever is being offered and let it mold and shape you for your future. Again, thanks so much for having me on the panel.
Lieutenant Colonel, 20 seconds, Lieutenant Colonel.
I say these words: the Parkinson brand is in demand. Let me repeat: the Parkinson brand is in demand. 60 onward, ever upward.
Okay, Walter, the last minute is yours. What says you? Can you fit in there, Walter? If not, we'll do part 2 for you. Well, we still can't hear Walter. Brian Calendar has been our coordinator from this end. You can get the Keys production. Brian, the pastor, Sonia, who has gone back to the school to teach. 2544512. All you viewers, we want to thank you joining us as we celebrate who we are as a school. And Edwin as well is saying thanks, and Edwin is logged on. We can't see those who are early on, but this is a special moment for us. I want to thank you, David McCarthy. I want to thank you, Patricia Corbin. I want to thank you, Lieutenant Colonel Braffett, Eugene Pilgrim, Frederick Ford, Walter Johnson, Mark Howard. You all have made this panel discussion what it is. I'm Carl Alfadmore saying it is 9:30 hours in the land, which is 7:30. I'm hoping that maybe during the week they can come with a part 2 as we go onward ever upward. Because the introduction's been done. Maybe Brian, you can invite this panel for one last hour where we can really look at some of those light-hearted moments. Like, for instance, how did that gentleman got the name Pearhead Jones? Who knows? How did they got the name Hitler? Maybe. And nobody mentioned Mrs. Hunt's principal deputy, Mr. Nurse. She flogged, and he flogged as well. I'm Carl Padmore saying thank you. Onward, ever upward. Parkinson to the world.
Go forward in faith.
Yeah.
I see that we're still, Brian is still there with us. Brian, do we have 5 more minutes? Brian, can I take 5 minutes? Brian, if we can get 5 minutes, we can do something else. Brian, we're still in the show. Walter, we are praying that you can give us something, Walter. Well, Brian goes right ahead. Okay, good. Now, listen. Walter, go ahead.
Hello.
Yes, hello.
That's a reset.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Speak. Speak, Walter.
Thank me. I had my Wi-Fi cutting in and out, so I
We type it over to your right, and we'll read for you. Type it, Walter, type it for you. All right, so let's go into some lighthearted moments.
Type Walter.
Okay, Walter, you see, type Walter, and we'll read it. So what gets his act together? Let's look at school sports. Pat, which house you were in? Let's shout out the houses. Pat, which house you were in?
Howard. Set E.
Pat was in Howard House.
Yes.
Okay. Lieutenant
Howard
Colonel
House.
Aaron Braffett.
Great.
Green.
Jilt's house.
Braffett. Huh?
Blue.
Blue
house.
Braffett
Jilt's.
was in blue. Let's go down the line. Frederick, what about you?
He would have been set.
Frederick. On mute. Frederick.
I was in greenhouse and set D.
Jeez, all right. You hear that? Greenhouse, man. Mark Howard.
Barnett House. Greenhouse.
Barnett House, Howard. Which is Greenhouse. McCarthy.
Greenhouse, Barnett House.
Barnett. I hope that those
800 at the stadium.
You did an 800 at stadium, McCarthy?
I ran through 800s at the stadium, 1988 and 1989. You should know because I trained you. Don't ask if I come in the rest. But I ran track twice. How many here make run the stadium track twice apart from yourself, Carl?
That's right.
Error running away. Error?
Listen, you know that when you ran, I ran the relay for the 1 relay, and I always ran the 3rd leg. And Sherlin, what's his name? He was the anchor. You could never beat us in that. So it was so quick. It was so quick.
McCarthy, Howard. I mean, the green machine of rain supreme. Those who are listening, please understand this. You know what I'm saying? I mean, Pilgrim, were you in a house, Pilgrim, or were you didn't get the privilege to be in greenhouse?
No, I was in Howard House, Yellow House, which is the best house.
Pat, you got company, Pat.
Yes,
Yes, yes,
all the
yes.
people in Howard House. So the others are just getting the sprinkles now.
True.
And for those who are listening, please understand that Parkinson also dominated horse racing. You all remember the jockey recently in just times?
Yeah, you mean Rico Walker and
Rico Walker, Parkinson again. We have been doing quite well even in horse racing. So
the other guy from
share these.
Antonio Whitehall.
Antonio Whitehall, yes.
Yes, he was such a small guy, and to think that he's now holding the 100,000-pound horse at that great speed is tremendous. He's done well himself.
And Malcolm Marshall, Marshall, and then just recently, he also played for the West Indies. Cummins, what's his first name? Anybody? The bowler. Miguel Cummins. Yes. Miguel Cummins. And you had a science teacher, Lieutenant Colonel, that used to flog you with the little holes from the Bunsen burner. A Pilgrim too.
Hillary Pilgrim.
Hillary Pilgrim. Hillary Pilgrim. I really hear these students talking now of discipline.
In the front there.
Pardon, sir?
That started to lose the hair from the front to the back.
Yeah.
And then you had it was a 7-day Adventist Apple 8. He used to flog too.
The Applewhite.
Carlisle Applewhite.
I would like to mention a lady called Miss
Players.
I would like to mention quickly a lady called Miss Weeks in the canteen.
Players used to.
Biscuits and my Weeks.
Miss Weeks in the canteen.
Yeah, biscuits.
Okay, good. No, on the canteen. Let's look at the ancillary stuff.
Brenda in the nutrition room.
Yes.
Brenda in the nutrition room.
Give us the name again, Pat.
Brenda
in the nutrition room. So you had
Miss Collins.
A great one.
Somebody is saying that when Errol ran the relay, he would run so fast he would shake.
One called Ben Strong, who was our groundsman and who represented in long distance races. Ben Strong.
Ben Strong, yes. Bernard Strong.
Bernard Strong.
Okay,
good.
Call him Ben.
I hope people are documenting and writing this. This is important. Bernard Strong.
Let's not forget.
Who's still with school now?
Charleston.
Raw Clark, yes. Olympian, Raw Clark. And Raw Clark, the organizer of the games.
We have a
That's
mention.
right, the senior games.
That's the name Clarkston Brewster.
Clarkston Brewster.
What about Miss Cox
Brewster
and Mr. and Lordy? They were
Lordy.
feeders. And Miss
Yes,
Cox,
Lordy.
they
And
were
then what is the snow cone guy? What's his name?
Grantley.
No, we don't understand that Grantley still run the school. Grantley still can run the school.
That is the turnovers.
Lordy turnovers.
Lordy turnovers.
Yes.
They said that Mr. Pilgrim used to be if you did not know the definition of photosynthesis. And David McCarthy loved Miss Green because she told him, good boys deserve food. All cows eat grass. Music.
That sounds like musical notes.
That's
Yes.
right.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Right.
Based in treble clef.
Sorry, I'm artist.
All cows eat grass.
So I did barbering at the school, usually after a cricket game or once it was past 3 o'clock. And there were some teachers who experienced my beautiful hair cutting. A few of them very well.
You did barbering at school?
After, outside the school time. But it didn't
Outside
always,
the school time.
yeah. Also get flogged for doing it. Like this.
Entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship.
Whoa, and there's Mexican. You all remember Mexican is still at this. Well, Mexican retired last year. Somebody is saying there was a slim, older sugarcane lady who sold next to the basketball court. What was her name? Pardon?
Slim Sugar
You know,
Lady.
we play basketball, then we play netball. I can tell you the girls, John, Thompson, all those girls, Esther Morris, Tylene Hoyt. We had a strong netball team all over the years, winning trophies.
Ruth Trotman.
Oh, Miss
Center.
Chapman. Okay, good.
Huh?
Ruth Trotman played center
Yeah.
for the netball team.
Yeah.
She was the junior
Also,
netball
don't
team.
remember Victor Hutchinson. And then Julia Edie, the president guidance counselor at the school. She's doing a fantastic job. But before her, there was a lady who had experience of she was a nurse. She came to the school as a guidance counselor. Miss Dean was her name? Miss Dean. Miss Dean was her name. And she was the guidance counselor there at the time, because that's what they did. They brought on persons with either like senior teachers or nursing background as the guidance counselors. She was there at the school, and yeah. Buffett, please explain to the young cadets that Parkinson number 9 company defeated all the schools, and that we would paint the school when you drove through the school with white lime, and we took pride in it. And that you took me to Long Beach and made me bring back a grain of sand for you. How do you make a young man bring back a grain of sand in the dead of the night to you? And I had to crawl on the beach and in the swamp at Long Beach. You taught me that discipline, sir.
You remember I mentioned the terms creativity earlier. Dynamics.
I wouldn't want the session to end without my paying particular homage to Mr. Marshall, who was our deputy head teacher under Mr. Barnett, a fantastic person. I can almost call him a guidance counselor who was not a guidance counselor by profession. Very fantastic person, Mr. Marshall. And as a matter of fact, his wife also taught her Parkinson for a while. Marjorie, before she was then, she became a head teacher. I think it was St. George Girls School. But I won't be able to.
We are doing extremely well here. Don't forget, like I said, Miss Mitchell, the librarian, was there as well. Many times, Miss Miller taught craft. Remember Miss Miller? Miss Miller taught craft. In fact, Miss Miller said something years ago. Excuse me, Errol. She said, "Craft is an art." He said, "Craft is an art."
Of course, it is. It is an art.
And that blew my mind, because some people look at art and craft as just a thing you do, but if you look at craft, it's an art, and art in itself becomes a craft. And we also had Mr. Strong, the art teacher. Mr. Strong, you Parkinson had some floggers in those days, boy. The deputy principal now, Mr. Ward, taught there from when he was like 19 as well. Mr. Ward, now the deputy. So really and truly, Princess Mary can't really take credit. We made Mr. Ward who he was. Right, Rob, we made Mr. Ward.
Yeah, he came from Princess Margaret, as did Major Mordor. And we made them Parkinson made them men.
Yeah. Can you imagine that these are close to our age and we have said yes, Pat? Yeah,
yes.
Did you arrive in time to have anything to do with the kiln? You were aware that we had
No,
a kiln?
tell us.
It's still there.
You serious? So
Still
let
there?
us go quiet. Pat, tell the listeners about that kiln. We only know about the tunnel. Tell us about
No,
the kiln.
the kiln was in the last room down by the tunnel. So
Wow.
if you used the tunnel, then you were quite close to the kiln. You could have got burnt.
Wow.
It was a part of the craft department, and to me, being in a T form, I was envious of those children in CRL because I never got to do art and craft. I never got to do gardening. I never got to do all the things that they do. I didn't get to do. I was jealous of them.
Yeah, it was.
Wow, wow.
It's
The kiln. Good.
It's still there.
The kiln is where they do pottery and fire it and
Yes.
get it right for exhibitions
Right.
and
Oh, the
stuff.
kiln. Yes. Okay. Fine. Good.
Wonderful things used to come out of that. Those lower forms that other children wanted to look down on.
Wow. Mr. Pilgrim, do you remember your first time going into the school to teach? How was that for you?
Yes. I remember having to go from Chapel Gap because sometimes the buses went straight on to Milo
Chapel
Hill,
Gap bus.
and then you walk up that narrow road that takes you past St. Barnabas Church, and then it would bring you to Parkinson. I think it's called School Road or something like that. But the interesting things about that time is that the guys who were bringing the Coke trucks and juicy trucks to put off drinks to the small shops, and they park on the road and the bus turn in, then they couldn't pass. And then you see like half an hour pass, and students are getting to school late. So the teachers had to go and beg for them and tell them, no, it's not their fault. It was that they were held back by the block road, and so that's how they got out. Otherwise, they would have been punished for just coming to school late. So that's
Whoa.
one.
IFCF, my comments.
It is called
Okay,
Chapel Gap.
IFCF, my comments. We dwell in IFCF too. It was a strong movement in IFCF. I know before my comments, you all would have religious knowledge was a big thing at Parkinson. I'm told.
Cummins, who was our IFCF person?
Yeah, I spent a good part of my
remember.
Was one or
I think Mr.
ICS. When again?
Yes, I think
IFCF.
Mr. Burnett.
Yeah.
Mr. Burnett had a part in that.
Yeah, when I first went there, I took part considerably, and we really got to a very large group. And we used to bring students from other schools to be part of the evenings. And that's when they first started these, what they call mini bus. And they would bring all these students. So many of the students got curious and then they would come. So that hall would be nearly full when we have invited guests. But I want to remember three persons, in particular, Mr. George Smith. He had a very rich, wonderful baritone voice, and he would sing at morning assemblies or even the ICF in the evening. And then a guy called Mr. Keith Carroll, he was really a fantastic pianist, but he could improvise almost unbelievable. So he'll give you the tune, and then suddenly when he thinks you're singing it well, then suddenly he's gone doing something else. And when he realizes nobody else, he'll come back quickly and bring you back. So, but these are the early guys, as well as Mr. Stanley Medford, who's still alive. He probably close to 90 now. I'll probably try and get in touch with him again.
Mr. Medford was our, he worked in industrial arts,
Industrial
husbands, and he did metal works. Well, Mr. Husband was more into carpentry.
Woodwork.
Woodwork
and carpentry.
Okay, now there's somebody's asking a question about the punt and the woods. Now, persons like Errol, Mark, and myself, and David wouldn't know about the Woods and
I
Pond.
know my jungle.
Tell
I
us
know my
about that.
jungle, man.
I'm giving you all, Frederick and Pat, a minute. Were there pond and woods near the school?
Not that I know of. We just had, right now where I live was just canes all the way out to the front road out by McInerney. And there were tracks through there that we would walk on after school on evenings. We'd go through those tracks to get out to the front road and to go home. But I don't recall any ponds or woods unless they go down by Wildy House.
Well, no,
Maybe.
Okay.
there was a deep pond exactly where the Malcolm Marshall tribute is. That has been
Oh,
filled up. I live
Okay. I call it a pond.
so I used to go near that pond all the time, and it was
Yeah.
pretty dangerous. Okay,
Because they're suck.
Barbet is a suck. You should call it a suck. You go in that pond, you ain't gonna come back out.
Yeah. It was a suck, yeah.
So it was a pretty deep pond, and I think my grandmother told me in the early days people actually used to walk the clothing right alongside that pond as well when it had the water. But
I thank you, Eric. Bree won the 100-meter sprint on the 20 boys. Um, then please know that Ronnie Grant as well.
Very.
Yeah, Ronnie Grant
Yeah, I
from
know.
Collins as well,
Yeah.
a Parkinsonian. We would have
Uh-huh.
had a good relationship over the years with Pinelands Creative Workshop. In fact, the Parkinson School Hall is still very much the base still, and they are willing to help the school. Now we have 9 minutes. We can't really overdo what Brian is allowing us to do. Uh, so let us now zero in. I'm going to allow all of you. You have one moment of glory. I want to start with you, McCarthy. And I'm coming to you, there, Mark. 1 minute. McCarthy, how was it for you going on to university as a Parkinsonian and then now rising to the top of education as a principal? How does that feel for you?
I would say that it was, for the most part, smooth. The preparation at Parkinson was sound. And when I got into university, I realized that once, but of course, I had to get into the area of comfort, which for me was political science and public sector management. And I found it quite rewarding. University was a very open environment. I didn't um, detect any cliques as such. You were welcome. You were respected once it was seen that you were a person that was knowledgeable and knew your work. You were respected. And the same thing I encountered becoming a teacher and rising through the ranks. And again, I set out to do my job based on the best of my ability and only to realize that what I was doing was a little bit more and it was able then to propel me to the top. Of course, you in teaching, you have to be doing your training and getting all the different academics and so on. And then when you couple that with your experience and so on, I happened to come into teaching when a lot of persons were retiring. And I actually had an opportunity to come to Parkinson. And I don't know what would have happened then, because I know that quite a number of my teachers were still there and would have been very senior. So I don't know if my rise would have been the same. But certainly, I've had a fairly smooth transition because I said the Parkinson teachers made you feel that you could do anything. In fact, Mr. Burnett wanted me to be a lawyer. Up to his deathbed, he was saying to me, "You should have been a lawyer." You tell me, only using half of my brain. But that was Mr. Burnett for him. Mr. Burnett wanted the best, and for him, the best was the law, and I appreciated that. But at the same time, I had a level of independence, and my thing was to try to demonstrate to Mr. Burnett, I may not be a lawyer, but I'm going to become the best teacher. So I think that I may have done that.
Okay, and before I go on to this, on a lighter note, please know that Parkinson, among the teaching staff, we would have produced a number of marriages. Interesting, it only happens at Parkinson. A number of the teachers fell in love
Very
the other
true.
day as well. You had the Wards, Rudders, Leon, Gittins, Hutchison. Then if you look at how Parkinson is doing in music, the tradition that would have started with Miss Green, you have Randy Eastman, Elon Clark, Sheldon Hope, and now Ian Webster, who's is at the school continue that. We when we are speaking about PE, we must mention Miss Helly as well. You have Mr. Weeks. Everybody knows Mr. Weeks. Mr. Weeks probably taught at the school for 60 something years. Mr. Weeks only retired the other day. So Parkinson has always done well. On the I'm told there are three Parkinsonians. I'd only mentioned two. You had Louis Griffith and Michael Stewart and Tevin Maynard up there as well. Mike Cummins, who again has to be about 80 years old. A PE teacher at the school for clearly over 40 years there as well. So this is good information that we're sharing with the others out there to understand that Parkinson was built on good teaching, good students, a good marriage, a good support. Mark, I'm giving you 1 minute, Lieutenant Colonel 1 minute. Then I'm going to Pat, then Frederick, and then I'm going to ask Eugene Pilgrim to wrap up. Go ahead.
What was your question, Carl?
Okay, yours is different. Look at your rise. McCarthy rose to the top in terms of teaching. You went to the rank. You're one of the tops in your field. Therefore, how does that make you feel as a Parkinsonian looking back?
Certainly, it's where my foundation started. Obviously, for the love for technical drawing, and I would say to people, more than being on the top of my field to some extent. I'm a mechanical designer. Now I check, right? So I find myself in the light of Mr. Barrow, right? I look for quality of work that we have to pass on for whatever customer might have. I do a lot of corrections and get my designers to make sure that they're pushing out stuff per our department's regulations. At the end of the day, I will say to anyone listening, it is important that you're steered in the right direction for your gifts and talents. At the end of the day, you cannot live vicariously through anyone. And I would say to the young students, don't allow others to live vicariously through you. Identify who and what you are. I think Parkinson at the fourth form level allow you to choose the direction of studies that you wanted to go in. And I certainly wasn't discouraged because I was not in the sciences. I went to where my strengths were. We talk about the lower level students. This world operates off of those that get welders, pipe fitters, plumbers, carpenters. You know, these are viable fields of study. These are viable places where you can earn a wonderful living. I certainly earn a decent living where I am. Again, I'm not the best of the best where I am, but I do pretty good, and I enjoy the career field that I chose. And again, it was fostered and nurtured from Parkinson Secondary, the technical drawing department. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mark. I'm coming to you, Lieutenant Colonel, but I just want to also plug in here. Martinus Junt, one of the best bodybuilders in Barbados, went to school there as well. Cassandra Gemmett is a top physical trainer. She's a top physiotherapist as well. We also want to salute her. Pat, when we get you and Frederick, as part of your presentation and wrapping up, please speak to the annex. When to you, speak about the annex. A lot of people do not know about the annex. Lieutenant Colonel, final word from you.
Yeah, so the annex, I remember being at 1-5, and that's where the jungle was. So the annex was where Lloyd Erskine Sandyford is now located in that general area. So you walk through the back there behind Point Primary, and you went down through what they call the jungle. But I want to say to you, as I move through life, having been motivated, I always consider myself as the best. And I say to myself, you know, if I'm beaten in anything, it means that that person had to be very good and they had to be very, very prepared. Because I'm not backing down from anything, I've not allowed myself to be pigeonholed. And a lot of people felt, well, you know, you become a principal and that's it. But no, I want to do something different. I've spent 10 years there, spent several years in the capacity as a teacher. I've served on several committees. I've served my country well. So now I'm here working in the Cayman Islands. And believe you me, when I say that the Parkinson brand is in demand, don't let anybody fool you. There are people looking for the skills that we have to bring to the table, and that there are skills that you can find nowhere else. So we have to continue to stimulate and motivate our students to be the best that they can be. Onward, ever, upward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Remember these names as well. Ed Bailey, Olympian, Barry Rock, basketballer and coach. Then you have Janelle Innes, and please Jonathan Pollard, who for a long time had the record at the stadium as well. Merlin Gittins will have moral to Noel Gittins at the school as well. So Parkinson doing this. So the young brigade, we're finished with those young brigade because Lieutenant Colonel Mark and David would not want to call them old. Pat Corbin, the minute is yours. Memories. Go ahead, Pat. And Frederick, you're after.
Going to Parkinson fits you for life. You go to learn, you're taught, you're mentored, you're parented, because when I went there, when I ended school, I still had a parent that I could relate to, even though my dad had died. Mr. Holder, our form teacher, he was our everything. He taught us history, he taught us English, he taught us life. And he made sure that after we left school, he kept in touch with all of us and made sure of what we were doing and where we were going and how we were doing it, and that we were doing the best and showing off Parkinson to be the best school in Barbados and on the hill, the university on the hill, Parkinson. Our motto on
Frederick,
mornings is go
sorry,
forward in faith and be kind one to
to one
another.
another.
And that's what we were.
Frederick, the last couple seconds says you know last couple, but yeah, I'm
Onward,
giving you 45 and a half.
onward, ever upwards.
Yes.
Those words meant a lot to me when I was 11 years old, and they still mean a lot to me today. I thank my teachers. Everything that I have achieved has come about because of tremendous mentors I had in my life, my family, my friends, my work colleagues, but above all, that base was at Parkinson School. Many people ask me if I had to live my life over again,
Stay right
would
back.
I want to go to Parkinson School? I cannot see no way other than the answer is yes. I had an opportunity to go to the modern and the cooperative school. I told my father and my mother, why pay for me to go to those schools when there's a school next door to me? And I have never regretted that decision. I've grown up to be a man, I believe a good man, and I have never
Education.
questioned. Yes, but it was all done because in school I was
Many
told,
friends.
do the best you can at all the times you can, to all the people you can, whenever you can, etc., etc. And therefore, I have to say that without the Parkinson, I don't want to hear about anything else. I know that my progress was as a result of the hard work and the motivation of my teachers. All of them, including this program, even today. So I thank the teachers very much. The ones whom I have highlighted and the ones whom I have not highlighted, like Mr. Bartley Prescott, was a very close family friend and lived not too far away from my family. So if I made any mistakes, he would tell them, and therefore I know apology. So I thank all of my teachers. I have absolutely no regrets. And my
All right, thank
my
you.
I think to the students, do the best you can all the time.
Thank you. Remember I had the bell, and let's face it, there was a guy called Ryan Ross, a youngster, and in third form, somehow law school stole him from us. Please remember that. Ryan Ross, a brown skin 800 and 1500-meter runner. And when he graduated from law school. But let the history shows that his foundation was built at Parkinson. For me personally, when I went to University of the West Indies, they said to me that persons from the lower schools would never be guild president. I proved them wrong. I was guild president. Not only was I guild president, the second year I ran as president, I was unopposed. Not one of those from the higher schools, as you would call them, decided to challenge me. I also became the Barbados Man of Merit, and I am proud that I went to Parkinson Memorial School. Parkinson is responsible for who I am. It's inside of me. I learned to share as well at Parkinson. There are some guys in my class who didn't have, and my mother always gave me an extra language, and I shared it. David McCarthy and I caught the schools, and let me say, my early form of socialization was at Parkinson. I learned to love, to share. I understood being my brother's
Appreciate it,
keeper at
boy.
Parkinson. I understood that. That was inside. I understood community spirit from at Parkinson. I understood respect. Even now, I cannot look at Mr. Pilgrim and call him Mr. Pilgrim. I can say it now in the panel. But on the street, he is still sir. There are teachers, you will still call him sir. And you will still say
Yeah.
ma'am. Adrian Ward is close to my age. But for me, it is still sir. Lieutenant Colonel was my sergeant major. I still call him sir. For me to call him Errol is a strange thing. Parkinson taught me respect. And I want to say to Parkinson, thank you for what you have done for all of us. Eugene Pilgrim, you have groomed all of us here. I just want to apologize for those who did not turn up for your detention, for those who might still owe you lines. Sir, I do really want to apologize for them. And I'm saying here now, if you owe Miss the Pilgrim lines or detention, don't mind this COVID, you can email me the lines and I will pass them on to him. The last minute is yours, sir.
Well, I just want to say that in school, some things good happen. Like in one of the forms that I taught, there was Wayne Goodrich, Victor Blunt, and can't remember the other guy's name now. I shouldn't. And they've all gone on to do the um, the academic work, and all of them are now doctors. Oh, the other guy is a medical doctor. The other two are philosophers. One, Lynn, is in UB, St. Augustine. Victor Blunt is in the States, and Terrence Marshall, that's the one that was living me. He is still here in Barbados. And below those came Sasha Phillips and Musa Degia, and they are the Barbados exhibition winners. And they're of the recent generation, that is within 15 and 18, 2018. So the school still has all that quality out there to put forward. What I would say is I'm trying to finish this legacy document of the school. It's taken time to write it. It has to be written in layers and layers and layers. But sometimes you get all of this, I promise you. And we are going to find a way that we like to collect many, many more that are in Canada, USA, England, and elsewhere. The stories, and we will keep them for future students to sit in the library and read about students who have been to Parkinson School, and they would know the kind of legacy that they are entering into, and to be able to analyze and bring to the fore a different outlook on the man called Roy Parkinson. So that's where the challenge is to get it put together. It takes a little time to read up a lot of documents to get there. And so I think when that is in the hands of school and various students and so on. And I think we could use it as a way of raising money for a scholarship fund. So every year, the school feel that there is a student who is willing to go on to the sixth form schools or students going to community college. There's enough money there that enable them to uh, engage education at that level. And if they come again, they can still go to university. And I think this is what we should do, and it's part of the heritage I would like to be firmly related to and evolving as time passes. So
thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, well, from Principal Barnett to husbands to Bowen to Reese, Lucinda Hunt, Victor Griffith, Keith Allen, Arson Allen, Jeff Rooms, and the present principal, Ian Holder. Also, we had in between there Mrs. Cumberbatch, who acted for a term. The story of Parkinson is a story to be told to the world. Edwin Yearwood messaged me and has asked me to say to you that the image of Parkinson when people thought it was all doom and gloom is an image now that is like a beacon, a lighthouse across the world. Where people saw it as a school that you just failed and you went to, but now it's a school that people want to go after. In every corner of the world, you can find a Parkinsonian school, 60 years, and we are proud of such legacy. I'm Carl Fadmore to all of you. Thank you on behalf of the board and the principal, Ian Holder, Deputy Adrian Ward, coordinator of this particular panel, Pat Doyle and her team, entire anniversary team, Brian Callender for making it possible. Thank you so very much for your participation. Everybody, good night, God blessing. And those who are now joining, let me just say who the panel is, and you all just put up your hand, panelists. Walter Johnson is not with us. Eugene Pilgrim is there. Frederick Ford, Mark Howard, Lieutenant Colonel Arab, Patricia Corbin, David McCarthy, and I'm Carl Alf Padmore saying, we love you, Parkinson. What's the motto, everybody?
Onward,
ever upward.
Ever upward. Thank you. Thank you, Bren.
Roger. Come on.
And me say, hey, 60 years of moving. And me say, hey.